What's going on YouTube? Cloverbells here back with another Scarlet Violet video, and in today's video we're going to be recapping Championship Sunday, where we officially have a new world champion. And I wanted to start by showing you this picture from the Play Pokemon Twitter website. This is quite symbolic, okay? Again, if you can't read the caption there, it says our new queen of VGC Ogerpon Hearthflame standing tall over Incineroar. I love this picture. I think it's quite good, and the likes also show that. And if you haven't guessed already, yes, Italy claims the #1 spot in the world yet again. Congratulations overall to, again, the Luca Ceribelli. Okay, I almost couldn't say his last name, but I want to say I hope I did a good job there. But it was an exciting best-of-3 set. We're going to recap that and more. We also had junior world champions and seniors as well, which we will also take a look at. Because it's always nice to see the finals, not just from Masters, but from the other divisions as well, because these are very, very good players, without a doubt. And it's also nice to see what kind of teams are, within those divisions at the same time. So we'll take a look at that. But also, if you're wondering, just in case if you missed most of the world's action, if you want to take a look at the teams overall, there's a couple places you can take a look at. You can look at the Victory Road VGC website, where they now have all of the open team sheets here from the world's competitors. I don't know if they have juniors and seniors at the same time. Let me see. Oh, yes, they do. All right. So if you want to take a look at seniors and even juniors, you can also take a look at this, which is great. But other than that, if you want to also look at usage rate data, which we went over in the previous video, you can also take a look at the graphic down here. We talked about this again, day 2 usage in the previous video, so you can take a look at that as well. But what also has more data on Worlds is, of course, the Lab Mouse website. This just went live, so shout outs to the guys hard at work at the Lab Mouse for all that they do, for making all of this possible. Again, we have to keep in mind everything that transpired, because it's not like quote unquote over. We're just taking a break for 4 months, because you have to play this format again come January 2025. So stuff like this, YouTube content, recapping worlds and stuff is still going to be valuable later on down the road. So that's why, I am taking the time to do this, because again, we have to play this again. So that being said, a couple of key takeaways. Just, in terms of like team compositions, what ended up being the best 4. How about this? Your Fire Water Grass Boys with Incineroar, Rillaboom, and Urshifu. Wow. Okay, by the way, Urshifu takes a little break. That's the wrong Urshifu, by the way, because of the recent Regulation H ban list. But the big 4 here, then you slap on Raging Bolt. Oh my goodness, Raging Bolt had a fantastic finals all around, not just Masters. But then from here, your last 2 slots, obviously it's going to be your restricted. It could be a Calyrex Shadow Rider, for example, or it could be something like Zamazenta, whatever it is it wants to be. And then your last filler slot, usually it could be something like an Amoonguss, or it could be something else. But either way, this was the best 4-piece core, right? The Fantastic 4, as I'm going to call them. All right, this will probably be like our first video in January 2025. This is the best 4-man core in Regulation H, right? No surprises, not Regulation H, I'm sorry, Regulation G. So, but just in terms of like other data from Worlds, before we get into the teams here, 5-man compositions as well. You can kind of see it here. Miraidon, Hearthflame, Ogerpon, Whimsicott, Farigiraf, and Iron Hands. By the way, Farigiraf, now a world champion, by the way. Okay, you slept on the giraffe, and now the giraffe is standing tall, no pun intended. Okay, so congrats to Farigiraf. Also, how about, again, that picture was very symbolic. Hearthflame Ogerpon, a Scarlet and Violet Pokemon is world champion. All right, so without further ado, again, you can take a look at the website. You can look at more data if you want. We recapped, for the most part, a good majority of what went down in Worlds. So, take a peek at our day 1 recap and our day 2 recap. But I do want to recap the finals and just say a couple things. And then from there, we'll talk about, some other announcements that transpired after the whole event was finished. All right, so let's take a look. So I want to take a look at juniors first. And again, it was a matchup between Kevin Han and Tatsuomi Shimanuki. And it was a thrilling 3-setter. Shout outs to Kevin Han, man. He's been on a muck this entire year. He's had some great coaching from some of the best players from the Master Division. He's had quite the performance in the ICs. And overall, it just ended up with him winning the World Championship. Couldn't have asked for a better year for Kevin, so congratulations to him. Let's take a look at his team as well as Tatsuomi's team, and then we'll talk about their best of 3 set here. So, from Tatsuomi, it was a Zamazenta team, but, some interesting choices here. Tornadus with dual weather, both Sunny Day and Rain Dance. All right, Terra Steel, again, a pretty standard Terra on the Tornadus along with the Covert Cloak. Again, the Steel Terra, good against, super effective rock moves, maybe from an Ogerpon Cornerstone, also pretty good, in terms of resisting ice damage. The Zamazenta was Terra Dragon, so you get to resist fire damage, you get to neutralize the ground weakness at the same time. So that's also pretty good. And then over here, the biggest one was the Iron Treads here with Court Drive. So again, Iron Treads usually might be found on something like a Miraidon team here, but we see it with Zamazenta. Look at the set here, Terra type Terra Bug, that's great. For the ground weakness, of course, you're able to resist that. Also for the fighting weakness as well. So Terra Bug looking pretty good here. Steel Roller, blow up the terrain, high horsepower, of course, and then Mega Horn, with the Terra Bug can do tons of damage, especially against dark types, right? So, imagine something like Incineroar doesn't want to be taking no Life Orb Mega Horn Terra Bug damage. So Iron Treads was pretty cool. We got to see it on stream a little bit, but more on that in a second. Didn't really do the job that it needed to do, and we'll talk more about why that happened. This is Choice Specs Chiyu, pretty standard set there, and then of course Raging Bolt here rounds it out with the Safety Goggles slot, with Clap, Bolt, Draco Meteor, and Protect. So Safety Goggles, again, able to get around the Amoonguss stuff, so very much appreciated in terms of that item. And then the Rillaboom, also a pretty standard set with Terra Water here. So nice Zamazenta team overall. Then if we take a look at Kevin's team over here, again, Kevin, running the Calyrex-Ice Rider stuff with Farigiraf. You've got the good stuff with Incin, Rillaboom, Urshifu, and Raging Bolt. What did we say, right? That's the typical Fantastic Four. Slap on a restricted, give me one support slot in that, and in this case, we have the Farigiraf here. So, sticking to pretty standard conventions as what the data says, okay? Scarf Urshifu with coaching, that's pretty standard on a Calyrex-Ice Rider team. With Trick Room, of course. Incin, Terra Ghost, Goggles, also pretty standard. Rillaboom, Terra Fire, Assault Vest, pretty standard set. And then Rillaboom, and then Raging Bolt, also, again, relatively standard team, okay? No, like, insane techs here. Even the Farigiraf here, Psychic Noise and Foul Play, along with Trick Room and Helping Hand. Very common move set that Farigiraf likes to run at the same time. So, I like Kevin's team. If I had to play a Calyrex-Ice Rider team, this would be one of the versions I would pick. Okay, so, you just have a lot of tools for everything. You've got double Fake Out to help you set up the Trick Room. You have Farigiraf here, a secondary Trick Room setter. You can deny, Grassy Glide and other Fake Outs into your own Pokemon, so that's good. And then at the same time, Raging Bolt here, really good against stuff like Urshifu, and just other water types like a Pelipper running around, for example. Against Miraidon teams, you can also bring this and get a nice damage boost. But overall, I like this a lot. And we took some notes as the games were happening. But what it really came down to was Kevin had a lot more control, and because of that, Tatsuomi was on the backseat, trying to always fight for regaining control. Because Trick Room was a thing, right? And that was the main thing. Kevin was able to, set up Trick Room, multiple times. And then at the same time, Tatsuomi was forced to try and stall it as much as he can by, protecting and then switching, but by protecting and switching, you're not getting as much damage as you need to. Whereas Kevin was, also exerting the pressure, with his Calyrex, even though he did drop one game. Overall, Incineroar clicking Will-O-Wisp not once but twice into Zamazenta, able to keep that in bay. I remember in game 1, he pretty much ignored the Zamazenta once it got burned and just focused on everything else. Ironically, that was the game he dropped because Zamazenta was the lone Pokemon standing and was able to finish off, with Body Press, even though it was burned and intimidated at the same time. So a little ironic in that sense. But what was key, was also game 2 when, you have to make a read there. The Glacial Lance comes in. Rillaboom came in to swap just in case of the high horsepower into one of the slots, but it didn't happen. And because of that, key KOs happened. And then from there, also, I want to note from Tatsuomi, the choice specs was also important against the Terra Ghost Instant, and that was one way that Tatsuomi was able to take game one, kind of force the instant to Terra a little bit early for the Terra Ghost, trying to not get body pressed. But then by doing that, now you're weak to the Chiyu, and I just saw Chiyu one-shot the instant with Dark Pulse, so it was pretty interesting. Some notes on the Iron Treads. Again, always protected a lot. Couldn't really click a move for that matter. I did see Steel Roller come out, but at that point the game was already over, and Rillaboom just reset turn anyway because it came in right afterwards. But Iron Treads was an interesting pick, for against a lot of these Pokemon. The problem was that Trick Room was still up, and it was forced to always, protect or switch out into Rillaboom. And even though Kevin was clicking high horsepower into a Rillaboom switch in, again, then next turn you have Glacial Lance, and it was just hard, to try and keep pace with Kevin and his play there. So overall, the Calyrex, along with some of the support stuff that all these Pokemon were giving it, especially Raging Bolt here. I would say Raging Bolt was like a real MVP of the entire Championship Sunday, just clicking electric moves, Thunderbolt into Zamazenta, cleaning things up there, I think was huge. The Terra Bug did come out from the Iron Treads, not once but twice, and it was very interesting, to try and do that, but ultimately it just could not get the damage output that you really needed to, and it wasn't in the right position to do the damage. So Tatsuomi made some good plays, made some good reads, but ultimately, trying to play against Trick Room under those Trick Room turns, and managing the timer there with all those turns ultimately did him in, and Kevin was able to come out on top because Trick Room gave him such immense pressure to be able to do that. So that being said, let's take a look at the senior matchup over here. All right, so this is the senior division. It was a matchup between Ray Yamanaka and Luke Kroll here. So again, you can also see their open team sheets from the Victory Road website here. So let's take a look at Ray's team first. And it's a Calyrex Shadow Rider team, which we did not see in the Masters division. Not a single Calyrex Shadow in the top 8. But here we have it here in the World Championships from the senior side. And, just looking at Ray's team here, the game plan is simple. We have what is called Protect the King idea, where once again we have the Fantastic Four with Rillaboom, Incineroar, Urshifu, Raging Bolt. Give me a restricted, give me one more flex slot. That is my Regulation G team. And no surprises here. Pretty standard sets all around. Calyrex Shadow Rider Terra Normal, again, able to win the mirror matchup. So this way another Calyrex Shadow Rider can't go for Astral Barrage in front of you. The Covert Cloak Incin was interesting here. Again, Terra Ghost at the same time. So again, you can't fake out the Incin. Doesn't need to waste the Terra Ghost option here. So this is pretty cool from Ray. Life Orb Raging Bolt. Again, very strong damage here. Terra Fairy Amoonguss does come in handy against Luke, which we'll talk about in a second. Pretty standard Rillaboom set here, as is the Terra Stellar Urshifu with the Focus Sash here. So the main story with Ray and how he was able to win was, pretty much get the Calyrex set up and do so much damage with Astral Barrage and Psychic. And then from there, your other options like a Raging Bull can clean up in the end games along with Amoonguss support. And that's exactly what ended up happening. But I want to talk about some specifics and as to some of that in a second. But from Luke's team here, it's a Miraidon Screens team, which we like a lot. Terra Fairy Miraidon, very useful in the mirror matchup against another Miraidon, of course. That's how you beat the mirror. And then Grimmsnarl Screens just makes the entire team super bulky. Instead of a Whimsicott here, we have another defensive prankster user in the Grimmsnarl here. Foul Play with Thunderwave speed control. Virograph Terra Dark with Foul Play. This ends up being quite the play here, coming from Luke's side, which we'll touch upon in a second. But for Entei here, Life Orb Entei with Terra Normal. Again, this is useful in front of the Calyrex Shadow Rider. Of course, most Terra Normals are. And then the Iron Hands standard set here with Low Kick, of course, the latest tech and tool on Iron Hands. Not too much Flutter Mane. So most of the Iron Hands for going the Heavy Slam, going for the Low Kick for a little bit more damage in the mirror matchup, especially. And again, another Terra Stellar, Focus Sash Urshifu. One thing to note for Luke, all 3 games he led Miraidon Virograph, which is good. You have a lot of flexibility with that lead. You can always click Trick Room if you need to. You can put pressure on the Amoonguss because, again, from Ray's end, if you're just thinking Amoonguss Calyrex, Rage Powder, Redirect, set up Nasty Plot, bring in my Fake Out boys in the back. The Fergaf can kind of help you there, by just clicking Psychic Noise and putting pressure on the Amoonguss and forcing this Terra Fairy to come out from the Amoonguss, which we did see, but it ends up living, right? But ultimately, a couple things to note. What really sealed the deal, especially in game 1, the Calyrex ran away with the Nasty Plot. Okay, this thing got set up immediately, and it remained in full health the entirety of game 1, and it was a rather quick game 1, because after you got that key KO against the Grimmsnarl with the Astral Barrage, it went to +3, and then from there, the rest was history. Nothing was stopping the Calyrex at +3, and that was the gist of game 1. The fact that it was able to set up and just put a ton of pressure after that. And Grimmsnarl was in the back for Luke, and that's not a momentum swinger in and itself. So that's pretty much what happened there. Then in game 2, really what ended up happening here was the idea with Terra Dark, foul play, OHKOing the Calyrex Shadow Rider, and it was pretty much history from there for from Ray, and then that's what got us to game 3. But again, we saw some helping hand, Sacred Fire play to one-shot an Amoonguss. Again, just one-shotting the Calyrex there was key, because there was a key moment there. What led to that was that the Fergaf did go for that Terra Dark, and then the Urshifu from Ray's side, just did not target the Fergaf, or it with the close combat. It went for Surging Strikes, means the Fergaf gets to live, pick up the KO with the foul play onto the Calyrex, right? So then that took us to game 3, and really what ended up happening there was the Draco Meteor miss around the world. So one has to wonder, if that Draco Meteor did not miss from Luke's, from the early get-go, we might have had a different world champion. But nonetheless, it happened. After that, Luke lost his restricted turn 1, from a close combat double up with Astral Barrage there. And then after that, it just ended up being an endgame, with Grimmsnarl, the lone Pokemon left versus the chipped Amoonguss and Raging Bolt clicking Thunderbolts, Life Orb by that matter. And, there's no Spirit Break on this Grimmsnarl, it's just foul play, and the Raging Bolt was very healthy. So there was no way that endgame was going to work out for Luke, so he just forfeited. And in exchange, Ray won the World Championships there. So Calyrex Shadow Rider became World Champion from the senior side, of course. And, Nasty Plot, just such a tool that Calyrex can just really put on tons of pressure, against the opponent. So as long as you can get that set up with your Fake Out options here and your redirection support from the Amoonguss, that's what ends up happening. So Amoonguss claiming another World Championship, but in the seniors, not the VGC Masters. Right now, Amoonguss was still tied, with something like Incineroar for most World Championships in the Master size. Would that be the case? Well, you already know the answer if Amoonguss could get that 4th ring. But now let's talk about Masters, because, that was the moment we were also all waiting for at the very end of the stream. That was the concluding event, was the VGC Masters. So let's take a look there. All right, now let's look at Masters here. Again, it was a thrilling 3-setter between Japan's Yuta Ishigaki and Italy's Luca Ceribelli. And I got all my predictions wrong for this, right? If you saw our day 2 video recap in the previous one, I made some predictions for Worlds. I thought it was going to be Japan going for the 2-0 there and getting a repeat. Well, not the exact person, of course, but of course, claiming another World Championship there and breaking the curse, right? So that did not come to be. I thought the 2 options that really gave Yuta a decent edge was the Landorus and the Iron Belly, and we'll talk about that in a second. So let's look at the open team sheets here. Let's actually start with Yuta's team. Of course, it is the Calyrex-Ice Rider, Terra Grass getting around another Amoonguss, and then here's another Amoonguss. Would we see Amoonguss being brought to another Miraidon matchup? Yes, okay, because again, you can't click Spore, but you do have other moves like redirection support, and as long as you can keep your options safe, Amoonguss has value. We saw it in seniors. Would we see that in Masters? Obviously, the answer was yes, but also no, because Amoonguss did not come out on top. All right, but that being said, you had the Pelipper here with Life Orb doing tons of damage. This can pick up a lot of Rillabooms if they're not invested properly. And then at the same time, you have Urshifu here with the Sash. Landorus Choice Scarf. So, key thing here with the Landorus, you get to outspeed the Miraidon, which means you get to either click Earth Power or Sandsear Storm. And again, you don't have to worry about accuracy because you have the Pelipper here. And then, you know, that made me think, like, what do you do with the Whimsicott here? But it ended up not coming. But at the same time, Iron Valiant here, again, Encore and Coaching, pretty cool. And then you have Spirit Break, you know, with the Quark Drive boost, you get to outspeed the Miraidon and deal big damage to it. And this ends up being a key play in the third and final decisive game, but it was not to be, and I'll tell you why, just, you know, in a few seconds, well, actually in a few minutes. And of course, after that, you know, it's pretty much just Calyrex-Ice Rain, right? So from Luca's end, Miraidon stuff, you know, with Whimsicott, Iron Hands, Farigiraf, Ogerpon, Hearthflame, and Urshifu Rapid Strike. So Hearthflame, again, we talked about this in some of our other videos, really good against Rillaboom teams that want to bring the Rillaboom into Miraidon, because now your Ogerpon Hearthflame is stronger. You get to deal harder hitting Wood Hammer, and then at the same time you pressure it with your fire type attack, okay? And then you have the Tricker mode here with the Iron Hands and the Farigiraf, which both played big roles in the grand finals. And then of course you also have the Urshifu here. We did not see much Whimsicott, if at all. Then from turn one, I'm thinking back to game one here. Yuta led Pelipper Landorus, right? So right away we're thinking about it. We're going either the Sandsteer Storm combination, Helping Hand Sandsteer Storm, or potential Sludge Bomb just in case Luca wanted to Terra Fairy the Miraidon, because Luca led his Miraidon in the opening turn, and Yuta made a call. He says, look, I'm going to Terra, or I think you're going to Terra your Miraidon to Terra Fairy and dodge my ground move. So what does Luca do? He switches it out for Iron Hands, gets that right, and the Sludge Bomb goes into the Iron Hands, not the Miraidon, and then you just lose the Landorus to the opening turn because he also led the Urshifu with it, and the Urshifu does more damage in the rain. And that was it. Goodbye, Landorus. So, you know, that turn one was a little bit devastating, you know, for Yuta. And then from there, he had to kind of play catch up there and just try and make ends meet. But ultimately, that was the key KO there. You know, losing the Landorus immediately was pretty huge. And then after that, you know, Miraidon just cleaned things up in the end game potentially. Now, in game two, I remember this. In game two, the key survival from the Amoonguss from Yuta's end, I remember it survived on 2 HP there, and that allowed the Calyrex to, you know, get up its Trick Room, and then also we got to go for the Pollen Puff and heal the Calyrex to full, and then from there, after Trick Room was set up, it was just, you know, click Glacial Lances, you know, and Steamroll, right? You're getting KOs there, and that was the deciding factor there. And then finally in game three, it came down to Miraidon, you know, with the Ogerpon Hearthflame, and Yuta brought the Iron Valiant, but the Iron Valiant could not click Spirit Break onto the Miraidon because the Ogerpon Hearthflame provided the redirection support. So this way you keep the Miraidon safe, and then Miraidon clicks Electro GIF, goodbye to the Iron Valiant, and from then on, you know, you get to crown your World Championship. So all in all, you know, there was a lot more than happened, but, you know, I'm just giving you like the Cliff Notes version of what transpired there. So even though Yuta had the pieces, you know, ultimately couldn't really get too much value out of them. You know, they died immediately, you know, the Landorus and the Iron Valiant, because it was not the right position. And that's important, right? You might have the edge in terms of the team on paper, but you still have to play the game, right? And that's what really separates the game from others, right? Like, again, you might have the better quote-unquote team, but, you know, if you don't play it right, or if you don't have the right spot, then, you know, it doesn't do you much good here. Now, again, Yuta had a fantastic run, terrific player, of course. You know, congratulations on that second place. But it was Italy's time, and Luca, you know, again, I believe had some help from Arash, right, and a couple of other players, you know, from his Italian community. So it's a big victory for them. So congratulations, Miraidon, first year competitive, legal, right, claims the World Championships. And that means, of course, Urshifu gets another World Championship. Farigiraf is a champion, you know, and Amoonguss is not, which means it's still tied with Incineroar in terms of, you know, number of World Championships it has to its name, right? So that said, some other closing statements, but some other information that we did find. So let's take a look at that. So again, I'm looking on the Victory Road website, but again, we had this in the closing ceremony in terms of the announcements for next year as well, but not just next year, but also the year after. We're going to Anaheim in 2025. So get ready, okay? We're going west. We're staying in the United States, and then after that, we're still staying west, and we're still staying in the United States because we're going to San Francisco in 2026. I don't know, man. You know, I could have probably picked a couple better locations than just staying in the United States 3 years in a row. At least pick one in the East Coast. Okay, if you're gonna do that, pick one in the West, pick one in the East. This way, at least it's a little bit fair. Okay, but we're staying here. Obviously, I've seen the reactions on Twitter. Not too many people are excited. Some are because it's in their backyard. Some are from the West Coast, obviously. It's a little bit easier to get to in terms of travel if you live here. Otherwise, if you're from, you know, out of the country, then you have to travel. Hence is the case, you know, anytime, you know, you have Worlds, there's always going to be people that need to travel. But at least we got our dates. Okay, you know, August 15th to 17th will be Worlds. And then after that, 2026, I believe it was like August 20 something, right? So, you know, start preparing, I guess. We don't know the full circuit for 2026, but we do have the first regionals at least for 2025, which was announced already beforehand. So, that's it. Let me know what you thought of the World Championships this year from Honolulu. Overall, again, Regulation H, we're going to take a break from it because, you know, now it's... No, I'm sorry. Regulation G, we're taking a break from it because now it's time for Regulation H. So, you know, all your restricteds, put them away for a bit and start playing some non-restricteds because, again, in January 2025, all of this is going to come back. All right. But let me know what you thought of the World Championships. We'll be back with another video in the next one, guys. Peace out. Have a good one.